this is the Dr. Deborah Show, and this is the show where we talk about bringing peace and calm into your life. Later in the show, we're going to be talking about mental health stigma. We're live at KCSB FM 91.9. KCSB is a platform for cultural expression and thoughtful discussion, and it's providing a diverse educational forum. I'm a Santa Barbara-based clinical psychologist, and I specialize in pediatric neuropsychology. And during my clinical training and my current work, I've treated thousands of people, and I want to share my experiences with you. I'm also a UCSB alumni, and I live locally in Santa Barbara. And this show is all about our community and how to create compassionate conversations about our well-being and health. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about mental health and well-being with a focus on law enforcement. We have very special guests today, James McCarroll and Bradley Crable. They're both part of the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Deputy James McCarroll and County Mobile Crisis Clinician Bradley Crable work together. James was hired by the Sheriff's Office in 2006, and he's spent most of his career on patrol working closely with the communities that he served. James was promoted to his current position in August of 2015, and his primary assignments are to meet, collaborate, and problem solve with community members, and especially at that time to keep IV a thriving, safe, and cool place for us all to enjoy. So far they've made really tremendous strides together. And James works with Crable, who's a SB County Mobile Crisis Clinician with SB Behavioral Wellness. And he's a crisis outreach worker who's able to make a determination if a subject needs to be placed on an involuntary hold, what we also call a 5150. So the two work together to respond to a new alliance that's called the Crisis Intervention Team. This pairs law enforcement with mental health specialists. And the program is actually called Co-Response. It's an experimental program that's run by the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department that prevents mentally ill people from hurting themselves or others, and also just that may have to end. I guess basically I'm getting scrambled up here. Basically, what I was trying to say is that they've been working to help prevent mentally ill people from hurting themselves, although this program may have to end soon. It's a pilot program, so we're hoping to keep this going. And Deputy James McCarroll and Mobile Crisis Clinician Bradley Crable have responded to approximately 80 emergency calls, although that probably is a low number. And is that low? That's probably very low. And they typically arrive first before a patrol unit to de-escalate the situation. The team is diverting people from acute hospitalization into lower levels of treatment, and also diverting them from the criminal justice system in lower levels of treatment. So over the life of the program, this pair of gentlemen has worked, to determine if people need a 5150 hold, and also trying to help people to get treatment voluntarily. And then when weapons are involved, they help to confiscate those. So welcome to the show, James and Bradley.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's make sure we can hear everybody here. Bradley, are you here with us? Maybe you
Yes,
could.
I am.
Okay. Let's see here. I'll have to make sure I have the right microphone on. Maybe try one more.
Here I am.
Okay, good. I got you. Okay. So welcome to the show. And I just wanted to give a background. So I explained a little bit, but peace officers in California and across the nation are frequently called upon, to manage these really important incidents that involve people with mental illness or mental health issues in crisis. So we need specialized training on the topic of mental health to help prepare peace officers to resolve these incidences in a safe and effective manner. And why am I talking about mental health today? I'm talking about mental health today because mental health stigma is, and mental health is the largest public health priority. It's also the largest financial burden of any health issue in the world, and that's according to the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum. Also in a report from the Centers for Disease Control, titled Attitudes Toward Mental Illness, they found that stigma and embarrassment are two of the top reasons why people with mental illness or mental health issues do not seek help or medication. And I always just like to reinforce that issues surrounding mental health affect people from all walks of life, so we're all, affected by this. I describe mental health as kind of having a physiological balance where our nervous system and our heart and our brain, our thoughts kind of feel peaceful, and that gives us a sense of inner peace. I was wondering, James and Bradley, if you would take a minute just to share your wisdom about what you both think of as mental health.
Oh, hi, this is, my name is Bradley Cravel. And mental health is, it's a condition where folks who are maybe just not in touch with reality. They could be suffering from delusions. They could be, and there's many variations. There's the far end of schizophrenia, and then we can have like this dysthymia, basic depression. But just basically, folks who are just slightly out of sync with their life and their basically their ambitions, what they're trying to accomplish, and it's like if you had a car that was not firing in all cylinders.
Right.
That's how I would basically describe it. And medication therapy is how we would make your car run better.
I like that analogy. I always like to say, it's kind of when we get dysregulated, it's kind of like when you put your pedal down and the car goes, and then it can drop way down too. So it's like they have to find that idling spot. Yeah,
dysregulation is a very accurate word for the condition.
But I mean, I like what you said about that the car idea, the medicine, what kind of gets the car running smoothly.
Pretty much in our field, there are the folks who are mentally ill and medication compliant. And to be honest, we don't have a lot of interactions with those folks. It's typically it'll stem from non-compliance with your medications. You're not doing talk therapy. You're not participating in your own mental wellness. That's sort of how we usually get involved with our folks.
Thank you. That's a great description. James, do you want to share what you think of mental health?
Well,
I just think everybody has a little different idea.
Yeah, from law enforcement, mental health can mean a variety of things, and it can be brought on by a variety of things, certain triggers, stress throughout someone's day, money problems, everything under the sun. So, yes, we do deal with a lot of people who are basically have diagnosis of mental health, but as law enforcement, we come into contact with people in all type of mental health crisis, be it something temporary at that moment or something a little more permanent. So yeah, mental health, it just is what it is at that time for us. So,
it's kind of like a present moment.
Absolutely.
Right? And it varies, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. Yes.
Well, and you two both work, I think what you're both explaining, for those of that are listening, is that there's different kind of degrees of mental health and mental illness, and I think what Bradley was talking about, is I guess what you're saying is you probably work with a lot of people who have more severe mental health diagnoses.
Absolutely.
Right. But that's okay. There's people that recover too from those. So I mean, it's just important to get information and learn what's going on for yourself, right?
Absolutely. I not wanting to go into detail, but I know mental illness from a personal standpoint, and I know that taking my medication and doing the next right thing has served me extremely well for a number of decades.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's what's really great about if you get treatment. I mean, it's just amazing. It can just make your whole life different. And I've seen people just make a full 360, from just everything falling apart to just kind of getting on track, getting therapy, getting support, getting the right medicine, and it really can make your life the quality of your life a lot better.
I'm very quick to share my personal experience with our folks, just so they can see firsthand that that there's life after a mental health diagnosis.
Well, and I mean, I know I somehow on the show, people share different things, but I mean, I know myself, I have worked very hard to counteract depression, for example, because that runs in my family. So I've gotten very into mindfulness meditation. I've gone to therapy. I have a good support system, and it doesn't mean every day is perfect, right? But you try to manage it as best as you can to get the mental health.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So great descriptions. So like I was saying earlier, we're exploring the relationship between mental health and law enforcement, and I think the rationale for law enforcement to intervene in the lives of people with mental illness and mental health issues kind of comes from two common law principles, like the power and authority of the law enforcement to protect the safety and welfare of the community, and then also there's the state's, I guess it's called the paternalistic or parens patria authority. Do you know that word? No? I found that on the internet. I thought that was interesting. It dictates protection for citizens with disabilities who cannot care for themselves, such as those who are acutely mentally ill. And often both principles are involved with law enforcement when dealing with people who have mental illness who pose a threat to the danger community, to themselves. So it's a really important job these two gentlemen have because, they're really making our community much safer and also educating people and helping them so they don't, I guess, get back into maybe jail or, get in trouble with, right? Because is there still restorative policing too?
Yes, there is restorative policing in both the city and the sheriff department, but it is just so important to have, if you suffer from mental illness, to have a support system, to have first of all to have a doctor, maybe a talk therapist, to have we have a few centers here, almost like clubhouses, where folks who have mental illness can go during the day.
You're talking about like mental wellness centers?
Exactly, which is a phenomenal facility. They have access to computers. There's
yoga,
lots of adult education classes, sculpting classes, art classes, and the staff there is simply amazing.
I actually worked there. I was a family advocate for a couple of years. Well, the Mental Wellness Center, I think it's 618 Garden Street?
617 Garden.
So if you don't know about the Mental Wellness Center, and either if you have a mental health diagnosis or if you have a loved one that has a mental health diagnosis, there's kind of resources for both people there. So it's a great place to go. I'd just like to also go over a little bit of what stigma is, because I know I talk about stigma, and it's kind of a funny word, but I broke it down into social stigma and self-stigma. And social stigma is when attitudes and discriminating behavior are directed toward an individual with mental health problems as a result of the psychiatric label they may have been given. And self-stigma is when the mental health sufferer internalizes their perceptions of discrimination. I find this to be really common where, maybe somebody always thought people who were depressed were just not someone they want to be around. Then maybe they themselves get depression and they think, oh my gosh, I can't tell anybody because, that's how they perceive themselves. So I think that stigma really can significantly affect feelings of shame and lead to poor treatment outcomes. I was curious if you, James and Bradley, how do you think that mental health and law enforcement intersect? I mean, I know you both do this for a living, so that's probably a big question.
Well, the way it intersects directly with law enforcement is where I like to use the word catch-alls. Basically meaning whatever problem someone's experienced, they'll dial 911. So when you dial 911, you normally get law enforcement. And because of that, we've had to learn how to be kind of social workers, mental health evaluators, everything under the sun. Sometimes I'm even a preacher for some, so that's how it intersects with law enforcement, because we're catch-alls and we have to know enough about everything so we can at least triage the situation until mobile crisis can respond.
It's almost like parents and teachers are front lines, aren't they, for so many things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just realizing, I know. So you have a lot of different ways that you're seeing that mental health and law enforcement kind of intersect, because you're saying it's a front line for everybody just calls 911. It's true.
And yeah, definitely. It's, we experience a lot of uptake in drug use. And I fortunately have enough of a background in mental health to kind of be able to determine whether or not someone's under the influence of drugs or they're experiencing some mental health crisis. But a lot of our deputies at this time, they may not have that training.
Right.
So when they arrive on scene, they don't know what they're dealing with. I wouldn't say all, but some of them, especially maybe the newer deputies who don't have the experience, they're not really sure what they're looking at. And that's when me and Bradley come in, the co-response team, because they'll give us a call and we can go out and handle it. But law enforcement in general, it's a correlation because we're the first people that people call. The community's call, they rely on us. We can't pick up the phone and say, hey, not really a mental health evaluator. our workers, so you got to wait for someone else. That's not how it works. We come out, we do the best we can until the experts come, and we'll handle the situation at that point.
Well, it's very collaborative. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, when you ask me what law enforcement what they bring is, they bring safety. Because that's what they do. They're keeping myself safe. They're keeping the client safe.
Right.
And that's what they bring. But something that is that I've learned is law enforcement today. They're social workers with badges. That's what a law enforcement is today. And James is one of the most skilled social workers I've ever worked with. And he's a deputy.
To get one of those degrees when they give a diploma for.
But like I said, the other thing about it is like, for instance, if I come to a scene, a person presenting who's high on methamphetamine could present like a person who's schizophrenic who's not taking the medication.
Right, it's hard to decipher sometimes.
It's very hard to decipher, which is why we take people to Cottage Hospital to get medically cleared when we're in the field. And one of those reasons is so we get a picture of their insides. We get to find out if they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and that very much helps in going forward with helping the individual.
Yes.
Because if the person needs help with their drug issues, then we can address that. The most important thing is getting the person the help that they need. And it's individual, and it's not a cookie cutter. It's
catered, yeah.
It's 100%, and that's what we have to determine is first how to help them. And then once we determine that, we have a lot of tools in our bag. Dr. Lee, who's the behavioral scientist behind this, has given us the trainings, and she's the lifeline. I usually call Dr. Lee while we're in progress of the call.
Nice.
So it's sort of like we're Skyping in a sense, where she may be in her office, but like herself or Dr. Warren, the psychiatrist from Cottage Hospital, we are communication, teamwork, and make the dream work.
Which actual lines of communication? What were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
No.
No, I was just saying constant communication. The Cottage Hospital, Sheriff's Department, Be Well, we are all on the same page when it comes to mental health, and it just works wonders to be able to have the resources where we can continue to peel back layers and find out what's going to be the best course of action for the individual that we're in front of at that time.
That's really great, yeah.
Phenomenal.
Well, yeah, because everybody's so different. You know, we're all engineered so different. We respond to stress so different. But so basically you kind of go out, or you're saying the police go out, and they clear the scene to make sure it's safe, there's no weapons, and then you come out in the field, they call you in, and just so people know, because if they want to call you or
that's how we were born. How the CI team was born was based on response times.
Okay.
Because on a check the welfare, there might be a deputy out with somebody for 45 minutes before they call for an evaluation.
Okay.
So there could be maybe 90 minutes that's gone by.
So there's no time set for
Exactly. The CIT team, we respond within 15, 20 minutes. We have law enforcement and the mental health evaluator together. So if there's 3 or 4 deputies who are already on the call, we can release them.
Yeah.
And believe me, less is better for in that situation.
Right, because some people get really even more under duress. They get
100%.
They get more.
A perfect example is we arrived to a local elementary, and there's a 9-year-old who's having bizarre behaviors.
Yeah.
Well, I know enough to know what I know, and I know I can't successfully evaluate a 9-year-old.
Right.
But I'm on the phone with Dr. Chase Warren from Cottage Hospital, and after I give him the clinical that I've observed, he asked me to bring the young man in. It turns out he had a mass in his brain. It was a tumor that was causing the behavior, which it was a happy accident that we got him in, but it was a life-saving happy accident.
That's a great story. Wow.
And that's the kind of things that we did. But initially, when they asked me to evaluate a 9-year-old, I'm like, I need to call Dr. Warren because, quite frankly, I'm not experienced.
Well, I love that you're humble that way, because I think that's part of the problem in medicine a little bit right now. Like, I know if I have a case where I don't feel confident, I will totally call and collaborate or refer, and my dad's a physician. I know he always did that too. I think sometimes people's egos get in the way, so it's great that you you pass that off, or you collaborate, or
and it's how we are successful in what we're doing, because I mean, literally, I am standing in the living room of someone's home. I'm on the phone with Dr. Lee. I'm on the phone with Dr. Warren. My direct supervisor is John Winkler, and I have access to all these folks. So I may be the person in front of you, but believe me, there is multiple people involved in how we decide to help you.
And I just want to throw this out there. Bradley, this is my guy. This program does not work without Bradley. He's very experienced. He knows what he's doing. He immediately jumped in a car with law enforcement and started to see things through our eyes. So, yes, the program, in my opinion, does not work without Bradley.
Yeah, we needed somebody in the field, right?
It doesn't work without Dr. Lee, John Winkler. We have a whole team of people, even Dr. Warren, Michelle at Cottage. We have a whole group of people that are all motivated to serve the community the best way they can. So the egos are completely out of the window. Me and Bradley are asked to do things that really sometimes may not be in our job description, but you know what? We see the end game in it. So if we have to do something, we have to turn a few corners to make sure that that individual's getting the care that they need, and that's what we're going to do, because that's why we're here. We're here to serve our communities. And when you have boundaries, to a certain extent, but when you're putting up boundaries and you're saying what you won't do, sometimes the care for that individual that you're with, his treatment may exceed the boundary that you're not willing to pass, if you can follow that. So we don't do that. Basically, bottom line is we're there to help, and whatever we can do to help, whatever our team can do to help, which includes Dr. Warren, Dr. Lee, Michelle, John Winkler, and the rest of our crew, we just get the job done.
Them too. That's so nice.
Well, because they're behind the scenes. Me and Bradley, people see us, and sometimes we get more credit than maybe we should, but we're not the real. We're the people that are actually on scene taking care of the issues.
Which is really important. Yeah.
But without our support team,
right? So
we would just be two guys.
I mean, I love the way you've organized that, because when I worked at County Mental Health, I would do everything from the phone, and there was not a clinician out in the field, so I'd be talking to a sheriff. But it's so nice that you're there, present, and you have the experience to understand what the person's going through with their mental health.
And the truth is that a person who's mentally ill, they can identify somebody who might be basically a kindred spirit. So it's not long before we can have a level of comfort between myself and this person, because I'm very open about my personal situation, because I think people,
it normalizes that for them.
100%.
Yeah.
I want people to see that there is life, there's success. I've been married for on May 16th is the 34th anniversary since my wife and I's first date.
Nice.
And to anybody who wants to be successfully married, you want to remember dates.
Dates are really important. When people come in my practice, I always say, also, I just think people don't go on dates. But my parents are very old school, maybe. But I think it's nice to say, would you like to go out Friday night, and then get dressed up, and no expectations, just laughing, and you can be friendly and enjoy each other's company.
Well, me and my wife, we have date night once a week. It's mandatory.
Nice. I know. It's so important.
Mandatory.
We have a 13-year-old, so we'll have to work more on our date night. That's probably one area I need to work on. So do you think Santa Barbara County is different from other counties, or do you think most counties are adopting this kind of approach?
Well, we're different in the first aspect that we're the only county where law enforcement doesn't write the 5150s in the state. We're the only one. In every other county, law enforcement writes the 5150s. In December, they started the pilot program with Cottage Hospital, and 4 psychiatrists got the ability to write holds. But from say June 1st, 2006 until December 2018, CARES and then now South County Crisis Services are the folks who are writing those holds. And if we give credit, I want to give credit to Dr. Leghorn for the fact that she changed the culture of how we deliver crisis services.
Where's Dr. Cleghorn? Because I feel like I've heard that name.
She's
Maybe.
the executive director for behavioral wellness.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I think I did meet her. That's right. Because is she fairly new?
I'm going to
A
say
year or two?
this. I'm going to say this is probably year 4.
Okay, I'm not up to date.
But she has centralized our crisis services. We have a crisis stabilization unit. We have our 16-bed locked psychiatric hospital.
The PUF, right? Yeah.
The PUF. We have crisis triage and mobile crisis, all within 50 yards of each other.
Wow.
So it's a sort of a one-stop shop. You can bring people to crisis
I was just
stabilization.
going to ask. So you could bring, like, if you had a family member or something, or someone you care about, you can bring. Where is that they could bring them?
It is at 315 Camino de Remedio in
By the jail, kind of a little bit.
right by the jail.
Okay.
And it's a 23-hour facility. We also have what's called ANCA. It's a long-term shelter up to 30 days. And there's in Santa Barbara we have a 10-bed facility. These are gigantic tools in my bag because to hospitalize somebody, that's the last house on the left.
Yeah.
We want to do everything we can
Right.
for that, and especially with adolescents.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
really want to make a very stalwart effort to not hospitalize.
They have to go to Costa Pacifica or something? or where
The nearest facility for adolescents is in Ventura. It's called
Okay.
Vista Del Mar. They have 20. They have 20 beds.
So Vista Del Mar is rebuilt, or do they move? Or
They've rebuilt about 80%.
Wow,
They
okay.
burned down in the Thomas Fire
Right.
December of 17.
Yeah.
The first building to go in that fire was a place that was my lifeline. I mean, I sent 80% of our clients to Vista Del Mar.
Right.
So that was a bit of a blow. But you know what? When that happened, different agencies went down to Vista with vans, and we took the people from the hospital that was burning, and we staged in the Ventura fairgrounds.
Wow, I was
And-
wondering about that.
And we basically, we kept making lemonade because we were getting lemons, and that was impressive. It was impressive to watch that. We recently had a flood, and it was on a Saturday. I came in and there was some woman basically sort of, rallying the troops. And I looked over and it was the executive director. It was Dr. Leghorn had came down herself.
Wow, that's nice.
And when you see the big boss down there with their sleeves rolled up,
Yeah.
that motivates you.
Well, that's the way it should be. I mean, even as a doctor, I was always trained. James Hillman, who took over Carl Jung's Institute, if you know who he is, James Hillman used to come here, and I was lucky. I got to take these cool master classes, and he said, just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you're sitting way above here and the other person's down. But we're all here together. And also, I like the Dalai Lama. He says we're all breathing in the same air. We're here together, really. And I love what you're saying, because when I worked at the county and I worked doing 5150s and stuff,
Yeah.
I would spend like all day or half the day, and I'd open up my little book and I would call whatever department, and the families I worked with were so appreciative because, it's confusing going through the system. They don't know who to call or where to go. And even then it's confusing. They don't know what's happening. So I always really think that's a better route. And it's probably saved the county quite a bit of money too, right?
And having had needed services myself is a big reason why I give my phone number out to people on a regular basis, because you need help when you need help.
Totally.
And if it fell between 8 and 5, that'd be marvelous, but it doesn't. And it happens when it happens. And for me, it's like, if you're going to do this kind of work, you got to leave your watch at home, and you got to do what's indicated at that moment.
Yep.
Because we're helping a part of our census are folks who can't help themselves. So I've assumed that role for you, and I can't do it out of convenience. You need help when you need it, so let's get it done. And that's how it has to work. Everybody has to be willing to do whatever it is. But 70% of my job duties now are different than what I used to do. but they're super important because we do wellness checks. Versus before, I only came in a crisis. Now I come by after you've been hospitalized just to see how you were doing.
Is that part of the ACT team then? Is that what that's called?
The ACT team, they have intensive case management, but this is something that we do.
Yeah.
That this is something that Dr. Lee has trained us to do, is to do follow-ups, and just so we're not seeing people only in DEFCON 4.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when I teach meditation. It's not only when you're stressed out. Do it when you're happy and learn what your heart feels like when you're happy and your thoughts.
Exactly.
And what also happens is we get to build relationships and rapport with those individuals after they're no longer in crisis, and let them know, regardless of how you were presenting at that time and regardless of what we had to do to make sure the scene and everyone was safe, we're here for you. I pass out my email. Bradley gives out his email, our phone numbers. We're here because at the end of the day, our goal is to make sure people are safe, to make sure that we can build a trust with the communities that we serve. So, the whole doing follow-ups, checking in on people, being available when they need us, that's just a part of what we're doing.
Santa Barbara's kind of a unique county, isn't it?
It's a perfect example of a follow-up is one of the first cases I had with James was we stopped by this little woman. She must be 85 years old, maybe 5 foot tall. But James said we had to stop by because she felt that her phone was being bugged on a regular basis. So twice a month, James would stop by to debug her phone. And he would take her phone and then he would sort of wave his phone over it and and then make a call. But that's the job, and the job is to debug her phone.
And when I used to listen to stories and do evaluations, and I go to supervision or whatever, and people in those days they used to say, "Well, you really got to call that person on that." I say, actually, we don't know. I mean, that person, that's their reality, and maybe actually they know something we don't even know. So
exactly.
Well, and you got to take the person that you're dealing with, take the hurt and the harm, and telling someone who lives by themselves that don't really have a support team that whatever they're going through, you're just going to basically make them feel like crap, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
But that's not our job. If I can come by, debug a phone, I can come by and take some imaginary cameras down. If me and Bradley can do these things, then that's why we're there. And that's why I want people to understand what we're doing out here. There's no script. There's no right or wrong way to handle certain calls. At the end of the call, we just want to make sure that we've served that individual or the community the best we could. And that's where our hearts are. So
I can tell.
If I got to debug a phone once or twice a week and eat some cookies.
The word I was looking for you is you deserve an honorary degree. That's what I was trying to say earlier, and then I got frazzled. But, because you can learn right out in the field, you learn, and you're learning from Dr. Lee, and also you're learning from each other. So it's a beautiful kind of collaborative experience.
Real quick, I myself have experience with writing mental health holds because I spent a short stint in Oxnard in Ventura County where I was given the ability to write 5150 holds. Now, we talked about Santa Barbara County being the only county in California that can't write holds. It's challenging for deputies and officers at times, so we'll call that the lemon. But the lemonade is the CIT program, because without the co-response team or the inability to write holds, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are today. And we truly, wholeheartedly believe that doing the co-response team is the way to do mental health. It's just safer when we arrive on scene. Bradley knows he's safe. I know that the individual that's in crisis is going to be taken care of. And it's just a seamless transition into whatever it is we feel that needs to happen at that time. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you think there's less 5150s being given, because I know I always worked. I think I did 2 or 3 people the whole year because I would just spend the half day, to do the work. And I remember it used to be very, some of my colleagues, it was much more often. So I don't know if that.
Well, we've had around 300 calls, and I'm going to say I've written maybe a dozen 5150s.
So that's about the same percentage.
So we're talking a very, very low,
Nice.
very low percentage, but an outcome, a successful outcome, 99.9. That is, and that's the only thing that's in our minds at that time is how we can help the person who's in front of us. And if it's debugging the phone, if it's taking you to Cottage Hospital to be medically cleared, to take you to CSU, whatever it takes. Severely mentally ill woman flies in from Chicago because she likes the warm weather. Well, she's in a hotel room and she has no friends, nobody. She just jumps on the plane.
Yeah.
And she's talking to a couple of deputies, and they're like, we have no idea how to help her. Well, we showed up, we talked to her, we asked her if we could take her to CSU, where she was able to go spend the night. They had nurses. She was able to get on medication. The following day, we took her to ANCA. She stayed there for a couple of weeks before she found an assisted living facility.
Yeah.
And she's out here in the sunshine, living in California. That was what she wanted to
She
do.
got lucky too because she met the two.
And
No,
so-
I mean Santa Barbara is very unique.
Yeah.
But do you think other communities will adopt this? I mean, if you're having a
Absolutely.
99%, that's a really
It's
high
the-
percentage rate.
The first 12 years I did mobile crisis, I did it as in a wellness check. Deputy goes, then I go. The only way this service should be delivered is in a CIT fashion. It is. I've probably had 2,500 calls before I took a CIT call. There is no doubt in my mind this is the way that it should be provided. Period. That's just the best way. You don't have 6 deputies on one call because, frankly, I'd like them. They're crime fighters. I'd like them available to fight crime.
Right.
And we'll take care of the mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I guess people think of mental health as maybe being a crime, but yeah, it's definitely different than somebody robbing a house.
Definitely not a crime.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing is our mental health is just like our other health. It's just like we kind of.
But there's a
forgotten
fear,
about.
though. There's a fear of mental health. There's that unknown
Right.
piece that causes people to pause, and that's part of the stigma that we try to overcome, because that's quite simply. It's an organic situation. You have it. We can help you with medication, with therapies, but it's like if you're diabetic, you
Exactly.
take insulin
Yeah.
and do the next thing. So
Right.
So yes.
I agree completely. I mean, I know that it seems like there's been more funding that the governor's given, so I'm hoping this will continue on. How do you think, James and Bradley, how do you think law enforcement accepts or rejects mental health stigma?
I'm sorry.
Well, now that I'm working with law enforcement and I'm actually in, I'm in the black and white.
Yeah.
I think that law enforcement has given mental health the attention that it deserves, and that's why we have deputies like James. They're social workers with badges. That's how law enforcement has responded.
So the Sheriff's Department definitely is taking an active role in training all our deputies and how to recognize the symptoms of someone who is going through a mental health crisis. Dr. Sherilyn Lee, Lieutenant Sway, Sergeant Soto, and myself, and Lieutenant Green. I'm just throwing some names out there, are individuals that were tasked with the behavioral science unit from the Sheriff's Department to train pretty much everybody that wears tan and green, and other outside agencies that want to know or be trained in an 8-hour course in mental health. We also offer a 40-hour course to certify people to be crisis intervention deputies as well. So the Sheriff's Department, we've definitely turned a corner, and this is something that we know mental health is here to stay. A majority of our calls for service have, in one way or another, have something to do with mental health.
Right. I mean, even firemen, right? Everybody, I mean, in the law enforcement field in different ways.
Absolutely. And just to go back to whether or not other agencies are going to start participating in the co-response teams, Kern County, I had a meeting recently, crisis intervention meeting recently, and they do a phenomenal job in Kern County. They have all basically brought all their mental health resources in law enforcement. They all work not under one roof, but they they work really close together to make sure that the people of Kern County are getting served, whether it's criminal or something that's mental health. So they do a great job. I know Ventura County is also doing a great job, in San Luis Obispo. They're there too. So co-response is definitely the way we're trying to go.
Yeah, moving in that direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, again, just doing what we've done, I don't see why it wouldn't be done this way.
I'm afraid to ask this controversial question, but I was thinking about Laura's Law, because I remember I met Laura's parents, and for those of you who don't know about Laura's Law, that's like, really the guns. But I was just thinking about, is the ACT team, is that kind of our quasi version of Laura's Law, or no?
No.
We don't have Laura's Law here.
We don't, not a specific team for it, but Dr. Leghorn was a big proponent for that, and that has been that's been interwoven into how we deliver the service.
Assess things, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I just I'm always thinking how the past and the future. It sounds like everything's kind of amalgamated, like put work together, so everybody's pieces, all the facets are a team.
Mm-hmm. It's no longer one person's subjective thoughts on does the person meet criteria.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's like if you say a lifeline, I'm having 3 to 5 phone calls per field call, and it's basically, hey, Dr. Lee, this is what I'm seeing. What do we have?
Yeah, that's what it takes.
And that's what it takes. We don't have egos. We're trying to serve I'm a public servant, and my client is sitting across from me. That's my only focus of how to keep them safe and to keep them in an environment where they will remain safe.
Well, and I like how you build a rapport with people too. It sounds like you want to not scare people. You want to try to work with them and welcome them and try to get them better.
Yeah.
James and Bradley, I was wondering, what do you think your work in the law enforcement field has taught you about, like, the attitudes held toward mental health? Just like, I mean, not necessarily just in Santa Barbara, but I know you're talking about, being in other, other places, other counties and stuff. I was just curious.
Well, like I said, I think we've come a long way in law enforcement. We no longer view mental health as their problem. It's now our problem. And because it's our problem, we have to take the necessary measures to make sure that we're trained and we're able to serve our communities in any way that we have to. So I can definitely say that our position, the thought process, the care that we have for our members of the communities that suffer from this, from mental illness, it's changed. And again, I'll go back to the training. The sheriff did not have to devote all of the time and money and resources to training everyone on mental health. My sheriff and my agency is so much involved in this co-response, and we care so much about serving our mental health community. They've allowed me to do this position. We're very short on patrol right now. We're we don't have funding for this position that I'm currently doing. We're working on that. My sheriff, my undersheriff, Dr. Lee, they're working extremely hard to get funding for this.
I read something about till June. Is that kind of what?
Yeah.
But you're hoping, I think
we're hoping in June to get. And this is, it doesn't just stop with our department, the CEO's office, the border supervisors. Now that they see the work that's been done and they're seeing the product that's been produced, everybody's on board with this. So I can talk about my sheriff, I can talk about the sheriff's department all day, I can talk about Be Well, but there's other people that have their hand in this pot now. So Santa Barbara County has definitely stepped up.
Do you think nationally, though, and also just, I mean, if you got together, I know this is probably a hard question, but if you got together with a group of, people from all over the nation that are sheriffs, do you think people, or have you ever been in that kind of predicament? It's kind of probably hard to surmise.
I would say in California, I think we're all head and shoulders above a lot of states in training.
So there's kind of a general consensus in California, though, when you get together with other law enforcement?
I have yet to come across law enforcement in any of my trainings where you have the pull chief to have people there. There was a time, but now they see it as the more they know about about mental illness, the better they can do their jobs out in the field. So
yeah, it sounds like it's been very positive.
Yeah.
And the deputies, the officers unseen, they absolutely love what we do because it's not their duck, it's not their expertise.
Probably takes the pressure off in a way, right? Because I mean, it's probably
does.
it's
And
probably
so-
stressful not knowing what to do, and then
yes.
you're trying to make sure everybody's safe.
And we're so quick. It's like going, hey, listen, we're en route, and the first thing that we do is James make sure that everything's secure, and then when we can release the deputies, we do, and that's a big olive branch because when the first thing the client does is see you making it smaller. That's a good thing.
It is good, yeah.
because in that time that you're waiting for the evaluation, that's not good time.
Right, the person can get very agitated. Yeah.
And they're not under arrest, but they're being
Right.
detained.
It's scary. I've gone to Cottage. I haven't been there in about 3 years. I had a patient that it was probably a sheriff that called me and said, we have one of your patients here, and they're on the side of the freeway, and they want to walk down the ramp. You know, do you want us to 5150 them? And then I ended up calling the psychiatrist. By the time I got back, they'd already started driving to the hospital. But what was interesting was that there was a lot of guards. Do they still have guards at the hospital, or is that?
They have security, but they have worked on their presence.
Okay.
For the simple reason
Because
of,
I just remember I told the guys, I'm like, I think she's okay. She's probably, but I guess at that time they probably were scared, like you're saying, because they didn't know what to do. I was just thinking about it's the same situation away for those guards,
Yeah.
but I mean, they almost need to be educated too, because maybe that would demystify why they're there.
That is so accurate. Like, but Cottage has changed the game.
Yeah.
Because there's a lady who runs the ER. I know her first name is Denise. I think it's Denise McDonald. But she actually went to a convention and saw how they were doing this in San Francisco. And she came down and dedicated a floor.
Right, they added that floor.
So we have a floor. They dedicated an ER psychiatrist, Dr. Warren.
Nice.
We have psychiatric nurses rather than nurses who were on a rotation.
That's what it was before, right?
Who, let's be honest,
didn't like it, yeah.
they did not.
It wasn't their cup of tea, yeah, for sure.
My clients don't say please and thank you.
Right.
They might be malodorous.
Right.
They might be in a psychotic episode.
Right.
They don't say no please and thank yous. And most people in the emergency room can't stop thanking the nurse for Florence Nightingale. But my clients are, they're delusional. They have internal stimuli, and you have to want to be a psych nurse, and that's
Right,
I
that's
only want to be around folks who has signed up for that duty.
I'm glad there are psychiatric nurses, though, because when I worked at the mental wellness, I remember they were coming through, because they come and tour to make sure if that's something that they're interested in.
Something that they do is there's a nursing program,
Right.
And we're able to have 2 nurses shadow me on mobile crisis. Well, what I do is I make sure they see it exactly as it is, because I'm actually hoping to identify a future psych nurse, because you're either going to love the experience,
yeah.
or you're going to be able to say, just anything besides mental health. But if when we recognize somebody who's pro psych,
Yeah.
we try to get them
There's
to
more
intern.
people getting interested in that.
100%. But I want you to know what you're getting into,
Right.
Because it's a tough
It's
room.
intense job.
It's a
I know my
tough room.
husband used to, when I'd be on call all night long, I think that really changed his perspective of my job, because it went from 8 to 5 to 8 to 5 with the phone and all night long.
Yeah.
What's the name of the extra department that they added for Cottage for the because I think
It's called EDHU, the Emergency Department Holding Unit.
Okay.
And it's right across from what used to be called 5 East. They've rebranded it. It's now called 5 Bath. That
Okay.
is the 20-bed
Right.
voluntary LPS
Right.
facility. So basically, you have to want to be
Right.
there. Quite frankly, the clients who we serve, most of them don't understand why we're talking to them.
Yeah, you do. Well, you probably are out in the field dealing with people who have really, really, really severe.
Severe and persistent mental illness.
So
Exactly.
just real quickly, the importance of the co-response team is exactly that. Trying to triage a situation. So, quick story, deputies go into someone's home that's in crisis, and now you're telling a person in their own home that not only you can't do whatever you want, but you have to sit here on this couch until a triage worker responds. can you imagine being in your own home and having to sit somewhere like on a couch for an hour and a half when you're in crisis waiting for someone to respond? And as a deputy or officer, you're thinking, oh my God, where is this person? And that person that you're watching is getting more antsy. And before you know it, they will force your hand. And it's a very stressful situation for law enforcement because we want to help that individual, but we can't allow that person to go to a kitchen, go to a bedroom,
right,
to pick up certain items, because all those things could become potential weapons.
Right.
So the very important thing about this co-response team that we have is the timely response. Deputies, like you said, I think the first few times we arrived on scene, once I determine everything's clear, everything's safe, Bradley's not in harm's way, I'll turn to them and say, you guys can leave. And the first couple times they looked at me like I was joking, or like, you know, nice. It's kind of like the tiptoe and I'm out of here because he might call me back, but now they're getting used to the product we provide.
And they probably can do their work better, right? With focusing on the other pieces of law enforcement.
Absolutely.
You know, like you said, they should be doing right.
Well, they're crime fighters.
Crime fighters, absolutely.
I want them to be available.
I like that.
You know, my wife works at the Montessori school in Santa Barbara. I want them available for, for an active shooter. I want them available for somebody who needs to be removed from the camp.
Were you two involved in that whole thing yesterday, or were you not?
We were.
Because the community was really, I think that stressed out our community.
Yeah, it was a little stressful, I imagine. Yeah, I responded to that. So protocol is if something like that happens, my goal is to make sure Bradley's not in harm's way.
Right.
So I dropped Bradley off. We were at the hospital, and he remained at the hospital, and I respond to the crisis.
I love how protective you are, like, because you really are a team. You know, you really care about each other.
I have no concern about. I've been on a call and had somebody reach under and grab a samurai sword and pull it out to show me.
Right.
And I was hoping that maybe the officer might have detected that before I sat down.
Yeah, it's scary.
So that kind of thing that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen with James. It doesn't happen when James is.
No, I have clear priorities. And obviously the person we're serving is a priority, but Bradley at that point is my priority. So once we go into someone's home, again, they're we're doing welfare checks and stuff like that, and Bradley isn't trained in the law enforcement side of things to see little things that I may see or I might pick up, and I'm not trained in the little things that he pick up in regards to mental health. Mm-hmm. So one of my favorite sayings is, do your job and play your position. I know I'm law enforcement with a little bit of social work, and my position is deputy. Bradley's mental health, and his position is evaluation. So if I do my job, Bradley does his job, everybody gets out of there safely, and that's where we are.
That's so true. You know, we just have a couple minutes left. This has been such a great, I'll have to have you guys come back because there's just like so much information, but I noticed that on the basis of like literature and experience, it seems so crucial that, mental health departments and law enforcement collaborate. So I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense, James, about that you focus on your job, because this research I was reading, it says that it's so important that neither the mental health system nor the law enforcement system can manage the mental health crisis in the community effectively without the help from each other.
Yeah.
And that if the collaboration between the two systems is successful, the law enforcement and mental health professionals really need to remember there will be some overlap of responsibilities in some ways, but that you're the law enforcement and you're the mental health clinician, and each discipline needs to use their skills and reverberate off the other in this crisis intervention field work. So I think that it was, just kind of validating what you just basically said. So I think you hit the nail on the head with that.
And I just want to throw one thing in there. I know there could be, like we talked about, dispelling things. Law enforcement and mental health, there may be people that when they think of law enforcement, they think we're heavy-handed and our goal is to come in and arrest people. But this co-response team is the exact opposite. We take phone calls from people's family members. We take phone calls from the individual. And again, our goal is never to come in there and arrest someone, especially if you're experiencing a mental health crisis. That's the last thing on our mind. We've diverted so many people from going to jail. We've found countless resources for individuals, and we've actually put them back with their families better than we found them, so to speak.
You've improved the condition that you entered.
Absolutely, and that's our job.
That's awesome. So you're trying to reinforce the last tidbit of wisdom there is the idea that don't be afraid to call, because
Please don't.
you're actually, and I know these guys,
Yeah.
they're very sweet and kind, and you can tell by listening, they have a big heart, and also they're very knowledgeable. So, I mean, I think we're really lucky in Santa Barbara. And, people do have mental health crises. So, it's okay. It's not an unheard of piece. Do you want to share something, Bradley, a little tidbit of wisdom before we...
It's just, and something that Dr. Lee said.
Yeah.
She started laughing the other day because we were in her office, and she says, you guys finish each other's sentences. and I'm like, what are you talking about? And she just started laughing. She says, you do it all the time. And I don't even notice that. But, like it's exciting being in a deputy's car, law enforcement. But when they had the call for shots fired, James looked at me. He goes, "I'll be seeing you," and he
Nice.
went and took the call. So there's no.
Thank you for taking that call, too. Thanks for protecting our...
But there's no. We have very definite roles, and mine is to do the mental health evaluation, and James puts me and the individual, their family, in a safe environment.
And you call
for the
and
duration.
go check on the person. So
Absolutely.
I think that's great. I would think that everybody in their family or a friend would want somebody like the two of you to come meet them. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on the show today, and I appreciate your kind of final words of wisdom. I'm always thinking of ways we can work together to help create a supportive environment that can empower and care for the individual. And I think one way we can do this is by starting to treat everyone more equal, and also reduce discrimination, and let's create conversations in a culture that are more accepting of each person, and work toward prevention. Some ways we can work together are volunteering, checking in with ourselves, learning about other cultures, getting accurate information from accurate, reliable sources, not random scientific studies. And I think that can lead to understanding, including, and caring.